Just look at him. So sleek, so powerful, so beautiful.
By the spring of 1991, young 50 Cent, aka Curtis Jackson, had proved himself to be one of the savviest hustlers in his neighborhood. His pool of repeated customers, aka drug addicts, had increased to the point where he had to hire his own crew to keep up with the demand. But as he knew, nothing good ever lasts too long in the hood. Just as Curtis was making plans to expand his business, an older hustler named Wayne began to make threatening gestures towards him. Wayne had recently returned to the streets from prison, and he was determined to make as much money as fast as possible and then dominate the local drug trade. Curtis, it seemed, was his main rival. He tried to intimidate the younger hustler, warning him that he better stop his operations or pay the price, but Curtis ignored him. Then Wayne decided to up the ante. He sent out word on the streets that he was going to have Curtis killed. Curtis had seen this happen before, and he knew what would come next. Wayne would never actually do the job himself. He would not risk getting sent back to prison. Instead, he was banking on the fact that some young kid would hear of his desire to kill Curtis and, eager to gain some street credibility, would take it upon himself to do the dirty work. Sure enough, a few days after hearing of Wayne's intentions, Curtis started to notice a young kid named Nitty trailing him around on the streets. He felt certain that Nitty was the one planning to do the hit, and that it would happen soon. This was the depressing dynamic of hustling in the hood. The more success a hustler had, the more he attracted the wrong kind of attention. Unless he inspired some fear and terror, rivals would keep coming at him, trying to take what he had and continually threatening his position on the streets. Once that started to happen, the once successful dealer would find himself drawn into a cycle of violence, reprisals, and time in prison. There were a few hustlers, however, who had somehow managed to rise above this dynamic. In the hood, they were like kings. Just hearing their names or seeing them on the street would elicit a gut reaction, a mix of fear and admiration. What elevated them above others was a series of actions they had taken in the past that demonstrated that they were fearless and smart. Their maneuvers would be unpredictable and all the more terrifying for it. If people thought of challenging them, they would quickly remember what these types had done in other circumstances and back off. All of this would give them an aura of power and mystery. Instead of challenges on all sides, they would have disciples ready to follow them as far as they wanted. If Curtis saw himself as the kingly type, it was time now to show it to others as dramatically as possible. With death staring him in the face, he worked to control his emotions and thought long and hard about the dilemma that Wayne had posed. If he came after Wayne to kill him first, Wayne would be ready and would have a perfect excuse to kill Curtis in self-defense. If instead he went after Nitty and killed him, the police would catch Curtis and he would end up in prison for a very long time, an equally fortunate result for Wayne. And if he did nothing, Nitty would kill him. But Wayne's strategy had a fatal flaw: his fear of doing the job with his own hands. He was no king himself, but just another frightened hustler pretending to be tough. Curtis would come after him from an unexpected angle and turn everything around. Without wasting any more time, he asked a member of his crew named Tony to accompany him for the afternoon. Together, they surprised Nitty on the street, and while Tony held him, Curtis slashed the kid's face with a razor blade. He did it just deep enough to send him screaming to the hospital and to leave a nice big scar. Then a few hours later, he and Tony found Wayne's empty car and shot it up. An ambiguous message that meant either he hoped that Wayne was inside, or he was taunting Wayne to come out and attack them in the open. The following day, the dominoes fell just as Curtis thought they would. Nitty sought out Wayne, expecting that the two of them would go together to exact revenge on Curtis. After all, Wayne had been attacked as well. Wayne, however, still insisted that the kid do the job alone. Now Nitty could see through the game. He was just the patsy to do the dirty work, and Wayne was not as tough as he had made himself out to be. Nitty would have nothing more to do with him, but he was too afraid to take on Curtis alone, so he decided that he could live with the scar. Wayne was now in a delicate position. If he asked someone else to do the job, it would start to look like what it was: a man too scared to do it himself. Better to let the whole thing just go away. In the days to come, the hood was abuzz with the story of what had happened. Young Curtis had outmaneuvered and outsmarted the older rival. Unlike the latter, he was not afraid to do the violence himself, and what he had done was bold and dramatic, and it had come out of nowhere. Every time people would see Nitty on the streets with the long scar on his face, they were reminded of the incident. Rivals would now have to think twice before challenging Curtis's status. He had showed that he was tough and crafty, and those in his crew were duly impressed with his strategy and how he had turned the situation around. They now saw him differently, as someone who could last in this jungle and someone who was worth following, a true king. Now you might be saying to yourself, that's a cool story, right? But what has that got to do with me? How is the strategy that 50 Cent used any use to me in, say, my office politics? I'm not going to go around shooting up people's cars or slashing people's faces with a razor blade. And of course, that's true, at least we hope so. None of us would go around doing that kind of thing in our day-to-day life. But it doesn't mean this strategy is not useful for us. For example, I had a friend who was in a similar kind of situation as Curtis was here, obviously not as dramatic, but similar. See, he was a middle manager in an office, and one of the people that he oversaw was actually the boss's niece. But this niece was a problem. She was constantly undermining his authority, constantly bad-mouthing him to all the other employees, and he couldn't fire her because she's the boss's niece. But if he allowed her to keep doing what she was doing, it would undermine his authority to the point that he himself would be fired. He also couldn't confront her directly about this because she was slurring his reputation, calling him an in-office bully. So any kind of reprimand or discipline or confrontation with her, she could twist to frame him as a bully. So he couldn't fire her, he couldn't discipline her himself, and if she kept doing what she was doing, he'd be fired. Kind of like how Curtis was painted into a corner no matter what he did. But he, much like 50 Cent, used a similar strategy. See, 50 Cent couldn't beat the strategy that Wayne had put forward on him, so instead he chose to expose the strategy for what it was so that it no longer worked, attacking the weak point of the strategy, that being Wayne not wanting to do the dirty work himself. My friend chose to do the same thing in this situation, expose the strategy of this girl, that she would take anything he said and twist it around just to make him look bad. And one day the opportunity for him to do this came along. There was going to be an important meeting that the office had, and it was scheduled during office hours on a Friday afternoon. He got an email from his boss saying just that he was supposed to forward on to the rest of the team. But before he did forward it on, he decided to have a little conversation with this girl that was causing him trouble. In this conversation, he casually mentioned that the meeting is going to be Friday afternoon, but who knows, maybe it might end up being on a Saturday and they might have to come in on a weekend. He didn't say it would be on a Saturday, just maybe it could be. Then he made sure that he was out of the office for the next few hours. By the time he had come back, she had done exactly what he thought he would. She spread the news to all the other employees that he was going to make them all come into work on the Saturday. So when he walked back in, everyone confronted him, why do we have to come into work on Saturday? To which he was able to say, I never said we're coming into work on Saturday, we're coming into work on Friday. If you check your emails, there'll be an email from the boss saying exactly that. They all checked their emails and naturally they were very confused about why this rumor had been going around, enabling him to explain that you probably shouldn't listen to this girl because she has a tendency to exaggerate and blow things out of proportion. Now her strategy had been exposed in front of everyone. Everyone could see that she was disseminating false information. The next week he set up a similar trap and caught her again, and after that she had no credibility left in the office. Nobody listened to her and she ended up alienating herself with all of her gossiping. In a similar way to 50 Cent, my friend, because he couldn't beat the strategy of this girl, instead exposed the strategy in front of everyone. Of course, he only did this when he actually had physical evidence, emails, proving that she was lying. Because in the past, when she would make a big deal over something and he would change it to suit everyone in the office, she would spin this as her sticking up for everyone in the office against the bully. But now with the emails proving that she was lying, she could no longer do this. Anytime he'd have actual evidence of something, he would feed her false information so that if she spread that, he could expose her as a liar. Once her reputation was destroyed, his reputation was now safe. And eventually, she ended up quitting the company. So my friends, if you want to see more videos like this, I do have a playlist of Bandit strategy videos. Click on the links at the end if you want to watch them. I am Bandit, this is Bandit Incorporated. Until next time, I will see you guys in the comments. Hi guys, I just wanted to let you know if you need any artwork done, the guy you want to talk to is my buddy Jack Burchill. He designed the book cover for the book that I'm going to be releasing pretty shortly. He won the logo making competition for Movie Mania, but this guy does so much more than that. He does comic books, he does puppets, he does full entire costumes, he's a sculptor, he's a writer, he's really a jack of all trades. I'm extremely happy with the work that he's done. If you need any kind of artistic work done for pretty much any project, Jack is the guy you want to talk to. You can contact him on his website or his Instagram, all of which are linked below. Alright, let's get back into it.